Dear students, hello and assalamu alaikum. I am Ali Abbas Kazalbash and I have with me Daraksha Islam who will help us in the presentation of this program. Today we shall discuss that branch of biology that deals with the study of plants called botany. As you may be aware, the study of plants is a vast area. But in this particular program, we shall concentrate mainly on the external features of flowering plants. This program will deal basically with the knowledge that will give you the simple idea of how to identify plants. Now, the first aspect of studying anything is the ability to recognize it based upon its external features. The study of external features of any living organism is called morphology. Morphology, the study of the external features of living organisms, is essential for its identification and characterization into specific groups and subgroups. As you also may be aware, the branch of biology which deals with the identification, naming, and classification of organisms to put them in a specific group or subgroup is called taxonomy.
Although the taxonomy of plant involves a detailed study of various parts of plants as well as the environment in which they live, but our program will comprehensively highlight the particular parts of plants in general and flowers in particular. Now, generally speaking, different parts of plants are, as you can see in this one, roots, shoot or stem, branches, its leaves, this flower, and the fruit which is formed inside the flowers. So these were the basic or the main part of a plant. Now basically, classification of different plants is based on certain characters. Now in order to classify any plant, we have to study these all characters one by one in detail so that we can place them in a specific group or subgroup. Classification of anything, living or non-living, is basically arrangement or positioning within a group or subgroup on the basis of similarities of that thing with the other members of the same group. Now this basic character of classification helps us to identify different plants or animals easily and to study their natural interrelationships. Now there are certain plants which are also classified on the basis of the environment in which they live. And on the basis of these environmental classification, different groups of plants could be, for example, desert plants, land plants, water plants, or mountain plants.
Now, to start off with, we shall first discuss the root system of plants. You should be aware of the fact that a seed germinates into a seedling, which then develops into a complete plant. And the roots are known as the descending portion of a plant. The root, which develops from the radicle of the seed, helps in the absorption of water, dissolved salts, and minerals from the soil. There are basically two types of root systems: the taproot system and the fibrous root system. In the taproot system, the primary root descends downwards into the ground and forms the main root, such as that of the mango and rose. In the fibrous root system, on the other hand, there is no main root, and instead you have long, thin fibers that are in equal length and develop straight from the base of the stem, such as that of the onion and grass, here well illustrated, as these are called fibrous roots or adventitious roots. This is of the onion, and this here is of the grass, which are clearly seen as fibrous roots. Adventitious roots are those roots that do not develop from the radicle. Instead, they grow from any other part of the plant. For example, the roots of the banyan tree, the prop roots of the banyan tree, and the aerial roots of the mangroves.
Now, the next part of the plant which we shall discuss is the stem of the plant, or you can say the shoot of the plant. This is also normally called the aerial part of the plant. There are some stems which do not grow above the ground, rather they grow under the ground. And this is the reason why they are called underground stem. For example, that of potato, and as you can see, that of onion. Now, stem basically bears different types of parts, which includes branches, leaves, fruits, flowers, nodes, and internodes. Now let's first of all define what is node. Node is basically that part of the stem through which different types of leaves or one or more than two leaves arise. This is what you call a node. Now what is an internode? Internode is that part of the stem which lies between two adjacent nodes. So these are some specific characters which are present on the stem, or you can say shoot of any plant.
After discussing the stem of a plant, we shall now look at the leaves of a plant and their arrangement on the stem or branch. The science of the arrangement of leaves on a stem or branch is known as phyllotaxy and is essential to properly taxonomically characterize a plant. Phyllotaxy is the study of the way in which leaves are arranged on a stem or branch. Basically, a leaf can be simple or compound, and here illustrated is a simple leaf. Now, the simple leaf consists of a blade or lamina, a flattened portion of it, and within it is the midrib, and from the midrib arise veins and veinlets. A compound leaf, on the other hand, has more than one leaf in it, and therefore has more than one leaf blade. And there are basically two types of compound leaves, pinnate and palmate. Now, it's essential to know what a leaflet is. If a leaf arises from the midrib or any other branch of a leaf or stem, it is known as a leaflet. Now, in the pinnate compound leaf, the leaflets arise from different parts of the stem or branch. Whereas in a palmate leaf, the leaves arise from a single point, as do our fingers from the palm of our hands. And the examples of these, of a pinnate leaf would be a rose, and that of a palmate leaf would be silk cotton.
So far we have discussed about root, stems, leaves of the plant. So now our next topic of discussion is inflorescence, which is basically the flowering system of a plant or arrangement of flowers on a branch of a plant. Now, this inflorescence basically helps us to characterize the plants into further group or any subgroup. And this specific character is considered by many as the main or the most important character to place any plant in a specific group or subgroup. Now, sir, would you please further explain about inflorescence?
Yes, most definitely. As you've heard, students, inflorescence is the mode of arrangement of flowers on a branch or stem. We will, however, just outline a few of the important kinds of inflorescence. Inflorescence may be classified into two types. One, the racemose, or indefinite inflorescence, and secondly, cymose, or definite inflorescence. In racemose inflorescence, the main axis or shoot continues to grow indefinitely, producing flowers laterally. The lower, older flowers open before the younger, upper flowers. And a good example of that is the mustard flower. Racemose inflorescence is then further divided into 7 different classes based upon the specific arrangement of flowers on a plant. And they are raceme, spike, spadix, catkin, corm, umbel, and capitulum. In cymose inflorescence, however, the main axis ceases to grow, ending in a terminal flower. In this inflorescence, the lower flowers are younger than the terminal flowers. An example of that is, of course, jasmine. The common type of cymose inflorescence are two types, basically uniparous or monochasial cymos, which is then further divided into helicoid and scorpoid cymos, and the other type is biparous or dichasial cymos.
Now, let's discuss the most important character of a plant on which the classification of most of the plants is based, meaning how to classify them in group or further groups. So, this character is basically the structure of flowers. Flowers are highly modified shoots specially adapted for the purpose of reproduction. The main function of a flower is to propagate individual plants by producing seeds in order to maintain the continuity of a species. Flower even has further subparts which are very important and which should be considered as such. Now, a flower can have different important parts as number one, thalamus. Thalamus is basically a short flattened axis, or you can say a short flattened floral axis on which the four whorls of the floral parts are arranged. As you can see this flower, the four important parts of these flower could be number one, as you can see this is the stalk, these are the bracts, and further these are the sepals, these are petals, these are the stamens, this is the female reproductive part which is called carpel. So meaning this is how you can easily identify a flower into four basic or important parts. Now, in order to differentiate between a stalk and a thalamus, let's discuss another thing which is called pedicel. Now pedicel, as you can see here, this part which is a stalk of a flower, this is what you call a pedicel. So this is the difference between a thalamus and a pedicel. And a flower which is having a pedicel, this is what you call pedicellate flower, and a flower which do not have any pedicel or stalk, this is what you call a sessile flower. Now sir, would you please explain how can you differentiate exactly between a thalamus and a pedicel?
Yes, that's not a problem. The thalamus, as you've just mentioned, is the flattened part of the flower in which all the floral parts are born, whereas the pedicel is known as the stalk of the flower. Now, other parts of the flower include the bract, which is the growth at the bottom or the base of the flower, and a flower is said to be bracteate when a bract is present, and ebracteate when it is absent. Sepals are members of the outermost row of the floral parts and together form the calyx. Now, the calyx is generally green in color, and so are the sepals. The petals, on the other hand, occupy the next row of flowers and of the floral part and are scented and brightly colored, and together form the corolla. Stamens, that are the third inner row of the floral parts, are together called the androecium, which is the male reproductive part of the flower. And therefore, it can be divided into two parts. The stamen consists of the filament and the anther. And within the anther are the pollen grains. Now, carpels are the members of the next row of floral parts, which together form the gynoecium, which is the female reproductive part of the flower. And the gynoecium basically consists of three parts: the stigma, style, and ovary. And within the ovary are the ovules where the seed is born. In a flower, the stamens and the carpels are directly involved in the process of reproduction and therefore are known as the essential parts of a flower, whereas the sepals and petals are indirectly involved in reproduction and are known as the accessory parts. Now, while studying a flower, it is important to have a clear knowledge of the terminologies that describe the floral parts. And Darakshan, would you please start off?
Oh, sure, sir. Various terminologies representing different types of flowers are: number one, a complete flower. A flower is said to be a complete flower if all the four whorls are present on it. For example, like China rose. Incomplete flower. A flower is said to be an incomplete one if any of the four ones is absent or missing. An example of that could be gourd. Unisexual flowers. These are the flowers which have only one reproductive organ, meaning either male or female, that is stamen or carpel. An example of that flower could be cucumber or gourd. Next is bisexual flower or hermaphrodite flower. These are the flowers which have both the reproductive organs, meaning male and female. That is, both the stamens and carpels, if present in a flower, it is called bisexual or hermaphrodite flower. An example of that could be water lily or rose. Now, next is symmetrical flowers. Symmetrical flowers are also called actinomorphic flowers or regular flowers. These are the flowers which can be cut into two split halves by passing a vertical axis which has to pass through a center, meaning a flower which can be cut into two similar halves by a vertical axis which is passing through the center. This is what you call a regular flower or actinomorphic flower. An example of that could be mustard or poppy. As you can see in this diagram, that this is a mustard flower and it can be cut into two similar halves by different vertical axes, but each vertical axis is passing through the center of the flower. Next is zygomorphic flowers or non-symmetrical flowers. These are the flowers which can be split into two similar halves but only across one vertical axis which is passing through the center. As you can see over here, meaning this is a flower which can be split into two halves but only across one line or across one vertical axis which has to pass through center. An example of this flower could be pea or sesame. Now next is asymmetrical flowers or irregular flowers. These are the flowers which can't be split into two halves or two similar halves by any vertical axis which is passing through the center of the flower. An example of that could be opuntia or canna. Polysepalous flowers. These are the flowers which have the sepals which are not united to each other or which are free from each other. An example of that flower could be radish and mustard. Now next is gamosepalous flower. These are the flowers which have the petals which are joined together from each other or which are linked together. An example of that flower could be China rose. Now, as you have seen that the sepals could be united or they could be free, and the terminologies used for them are polysepalous and gamosepalous. So is the case with the petals. Polypetalous flower is that flower in which the petals of that flowers, they are not linked together or they are not joined with each other. An example of that could be rose. So is the case with the gamopetalous flower, meaning gamopetalous flowers are those flowers in which the petals of that flower, they are linked together or they are joined together. An example of that flower could be thorn apple and epomia. Now, the arrangement of sepals and the petals on a flower is called estivation. Now, estivation is also a very important character. So now let's go to our sir and ask him, would you please further explain what you mean by estivation?
Yes, for sure. As you've just mentioned, the mode of arrangement of sepals and petals on a flower are called estivation. They're arranged in a particular manner, and estivation is then further divided into four different kinds: valvate, twisted, imbricate, and vixillary. And examples of those would be, if it's a valvate flower, it would be custard. If it's a twisted flower, then it would be China rose. Imbricate would be a sessile pine, and vixillary would be pea. Other terminologies related to the floral parts in general and the reproductive parts in particular are monadelphous flowers. And in monadelphous flowers, the filaments are united into one single bundle, but the anthers are still free. An example of that would be in the China rose. Diadelphous flowers in which the filaments are united into two bundles, for example, the pea or beans. In polydelphous flowers, the filaments are united into more than two bundles, and an example of that would be silk cotton. Another term that you should be familiar with is placentation. Now, placentation is the term used to describe the arrangement of a placenta inside the ovary, and is divided into 6 different types. Marginal, those found in beans and peas. Basal, as in the sunflower. Superficial, that's found in the water lily. Parietal, which is found in the mustard or poppy flower. Exile, which is found in the China rose or ladyfinger. And free central, which is found in the portulaca flower.
The number and arrangement of the floral parts, their cohesion, adhesion, sex, and so many other characters, they could be identified or easily studied by a formula that is known as floral formula. So now let's request Sir to please explain this floral formula further.
Yes, most definitely. At least I shall try. Certain letters, symbols, and signs are used in the floral formula to illustrate the various parts of a flower. As shown here in this card, you can see that the letter capital K with an asterisk and a number in the brackets indicates the number of sepals in a calyx when the sepals are free. The capital K with just numbers in the bracket indicates gamma sepalous. Capital C is with a number is for polypetalous. A capital C with the numbers in brackets is for gamma petalous. A capital A is for the number of stamens when the stamens are free. A capital A with a number in the brackets is when the stamens are united. A capital G with a number when the carpels are free, that is known as epocarpus. And a capital G with a number in the brackets is when the carpels are united, which is known as syncarpus. Now, a capital G with a line on top of it indicates that the ovary is inferior. A capital G with a line underneath it indicates that the ovary is superior. Now, the letters BR indicate whether the flower is bracteate or not. If it's present, it means that the flower is bracteate. If it's not, that means it's ebracteate. This symbol indicates a unisexual male flower. This symbol indicates a unisexual female flower. This symbol indicates a bisexual or hermaphrodite flower. And this symbol indicates an actinomorphic flower, and this a zygomorphic flower. Now, the features, as well as the general arrangement and structure of a floral parts, are depicted with the help of a floral diagram. We shall ask Daraksha to please illustrate the floral diagram.
Oh, surely, sir. Now, various shape signs and formulas used for the floral diagrams or the floral parts are this one for sepal, this one for petals, this one for stamen, and this one for placentation. Now, as you can see in this card, this is how you place all these shape signs for different floral parts in a floral formula. How they are arranged, the whorl of sepals, the whorl of petals, the stamens, and the placentation of the ovary. Now, sir, is it possible to know all the character of a plant or of a flower just by knowing its floral formula or floral diagram?
Well, not exactly, but there is sufficient information in most cases in the floral diagram and floral formula to help show or illustrate the basic characteristics of a flower. Dear students, now you should try yourself to draw a floral diagram and write a floral formula, and learn the various signs and symbols and letters associated with it. and compare your answers with the floral diagram and floral formula, which we shall provide a little later. So far, we have discussed the characteristics of different types of flowering plants in order to place them into a specific group or subgroup. Now, this study will help in identifying the various characteristics of the flower and of the flowering plant itself, to position it into the correct taxonomic nomenclature for that particular flower. Now, the floral diagram and floral formula that has been given to us is of this flower. And as you can see from this floral diagram and floral formula, that this is a complete flower, it is an actinomorphic flower, it is a bisexual flower, it is bracteate, it has a bract, which is this, it has 5 sepals, which are gammosepalous, it has 5 petals, which are polypetalous, it has 5 stamens, which are free but attached to the petals, as illustrated here. And it has an ovary, which is superior, has 2 carpels in it, is epipetalous, and the placentation is exile. With this, we come to the end of this program. We wish to thank you for your attention. Until we meet again, Daraksha and myself would like to say Khuda Hafiz and best wishes. Khuda Hafiz.